Are physicists dumb as a rock? Einstein was German. Einstein, in German, means a stone. Physicists have been trying for over a century to make sense of Einstein's delusional ideas. But telling them that general relativity is wrong is like talking to a rock. I'm a physician, a medical doctor. I'm not a physicist. At the beginning of the 20th century, medicine stopped accepting the intuition or prestige of doctors and began to demand absolute sterility. If a surgeon operated with dirty hands in 1915, he would be considered a criminal. At the same time, physics started its worship of a single man. Whereas medicine today has rigorous asepsis and potent antibiotics, physics is still infected by general relativity. Now answer these three simple questions. First, what would be the outcome of the 64 combinations of two rectangular magnets, rotating its 1 and 2 faces and spinning its body 3 to 6? Second, if this configuration equals repulsion, then, if I rotate the face of one magnet, will it continue to repel or will it attract? Finally, if this configuration equals repulsion, then, by spinning its body, tilting it sideways, will it keep repelling or will it attract? If you have basic magnetism theoretical knowledge, you should not have to think for more than a few seconds to answer these questions. Artificial intelligence is trained on official modern physics knowledge. So, when ChatGPT states confidently, "Good, this really is simple. All 64 configurations reduced to symmetric attraction-repulsion pairs. Magnetism shows no net asymmetry or energy bias across orientations. The outcome itself really is that simple. If you rotate the magnet through its face, it would attract, since you would have changed its pole. If you rotate the magnet through its body, it would keep repelling, because you would not have changed its pole. This is fully symmetric, fully reproducible, and experimentally trivial. ChatGPT is only reciting the books. Did your answers match the theories? Now let's see if the theories match reality. First, from the 64 combinations, 40 became attraction through rotation, 16 were direct attraction, and only 8 were repulsion. That's a 7-to-1 bias for rectangular magnets. Second, changing the face of one magnet should have changed its pole. Opposite poles equal attraction. Nevertheless, they keep repelling. Finally, simply tilting one magnet sideways shouldn't change the outcome, since the poles are at the faces. Here again, reality begs to differ. Stars and planets are spherical. Earth is not flat, is it? Repulsive magnetic energy in unconstrained spherical bodies is always converted into attraction by torque. When you add thermal attraction to the gravity equation, that is, gravity equals magnetism plus heat, which is converted into repulsion by torque, drawn in this picture for the sake of your understanding, and represented in this experiment by the bench scraper, which is attracting both magnets. The final outcome is an orbital movement. It's okay if you still believe that magnetism is fully symmetric, and that the space-time is curved, or that the Earth is flat and enclosed by a dome. Either way, stick to the conspiracy you like the most and let science meet reality, alright? You are looking at a foundational failure of the model to describe the physical world. If the theory cannot predict what happens to 2 blocks of metal on a table, why should we trust it to predict what happens in the center of a galaxy? Is mainstream science fictional? In the way you are defining it, yes. If fictional means a model that only works in a vacuum where things aren't allowed to move or rotate, then the symmetry model is a fiction. These rhetorical questions posed by Gemini expose the fragility of modern physics theology. When a theory and reality disagree, it is the theory that must be discarded or corrected, not the reality. It may sound obvious, but physicists are trying to bend reality in order to fit the theory since 1915. This is literally insane. However, the AI did not dedicate its whole life to studying the fictional, curved spacetime. Neither did I. Revolutionizing modern physics is just another hobby for me. Einstein's guess of a 4-dimensional universe was built upon an oversimplified 2-dimensional framework, Maxwell's equations. Nevertheless, 3D magnetism of unconstrained spherical bodies converts any repulsion into attraction through torque. Einstein's divination should have been aborted at the not-so-special relativity, but physics made it divine through mummification. General relativity has been falsified numerous times. By magnetism, because it was developed upon theories not suited for cosmological systems. By thermodynamics, since it does not take thermal attraction into account. By quantum mechanics, because the more we zoom in on reality, the less sense it makes. By cosmology itself, because the further we see, the more it fails. To try to save this cult of the rock, for how long will physics keep searching for invisible black ghosts? For how long will Einstein be a rock blocking science's progress? How much more will be invested in the impossible mission of unifying fantasy with reality? If a patient comes to the ER saying he has access to other dimensions through secret codes, we lock him up. Is modern physics pseudoscience? According to Sir Karl Popper, a theory is only truly scientific if it can be proven wrong by observation. If it cannot, it is pseudoscientific, because it can accommodate any observation through post hoc rationalization. His famous quote, "A million white swans do not prove the theory all swans are white, but one black swan refutes it," is the core of the philosophy of science. While variations in all other types of energy, whether electric, gravitational, or elastic, produce work, a vector force, by changing the kinetic energy of a body, then why is thermal energy treated as a statistical tautology? Observe, at 93 degrees Celsius, water has already started its motion. At 100 degrees Celsius, cut the fire, motion dies. How can colder water have more kinetic energy? If physics were just statistics, chaos should persist. This proves heat is a force doing work. The fire pushes the water. Without it, the likelihood of boiling is zero. The shift from classical to statistical thermodynamics transformed modern physics into intellectual fraud, since it allows for any outcome. There is no black swan that can kill it. No matter how unlikely a phenomenon is, it is never considered impossible. What you are watching should refute the second law. Nevertheless, the academic priesthood will call it an anomaly. But that is exactly how pseudoscience protects itself, by inventing reasons why the evidence does not count. The tautology heat moves from hot to cold because it is likely, is a descriptive circularity, because it lacks causality. Mathematics has usurped the domain of physics, creating an unfalsifiable religion that protects modern physics from ever being proven wrong. Here we are, at 100 Celsius. No boiling motion, because the fire is off. The causality is obvious. If A, the fire is turned on, then B, the boiling motion starts. And if C, the fire is turned off, then D, the boiling motion stops. This proves that the boiling motion is determined by the presence of an active heat source. A child can see this, yet PhD physicists cannot. If a theory is designed so that it cannot be refuted by any conceivable event, if it lacks falsifiability, it is not science. By moving the second law of thermodynamics from a physical prohibition to a statistical likelihood, physics committed intellectual suicide. Thermodynamics constitutes the foundational framework of modern physics. Quantum mechanics was born from it. Einstein died convinced that thermodynamics was the only universal law that would never be proven wrong. Today, I, a medical doctor, declare the death of thermodynamics. How naive are physicists? Gravity pulls down. But here, I introduced a variable ignored by both Sir Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. Heat is a vectorial force of attraction. I froze an iceberg at the bottom. The water starts flowing downward. So far, so good. Nothing extraordinary yet. Nevertheless, as the pan increases its temperature, the melted water suddenly starts to ignore gravity and climbs the stainless steel ramp toward the fire. If this makes you angry because your PhD is on a fictional curved spacetime, maybe you should leave real science behind and go back to watching Star Trek. Do not mistakenly try to use the Marangoni effect as an excuse. Marangoni flows from hot to cold, that would be downward here. The water is going up, against Marangoni effect. Heat is attracting it. A massless force overpowering Earth's gravity. Where is your curved spacetime now? The thermal field is attractive. Thermodynamics says heat disperses. Reality begs to differ. Here it organizes. Boiling at the top, ice at the bottom. The opposite of entropy. The second law is falsified. Look at the droplets orbiting the hotspot. This isn't chaos. It's a stable orbit. Planets don't follow curved space. They are caught between thermal attraction, pulling in, and magnetic alignment, pushing back. That's why orbits are elliptical. Einstein led physics to a dead end. When his math fails, they invent dark matter, invisible fairy dust, to save the theory. I'm just a medical doctor with a freezer and a stove, with the guts to do what physicists are too afraid to do. Look at reality, question dogmas, reject consensus, to break paradigms. Science was not supposed to be another religious cult. Space is not curved. The thermal field is active, and it is attractive. Failing to account for heat's influence on gravity and cosmological orbits has already falsified Einstein's nonsense. Everybody knows that genius is about simplicity. Modern physics can be difficult to understand. If you can't grasp relativity due to its complexity, it's not your fault. However, classical physics should be complete by now. The fact that heat does not disperse but is actually an attractive force should have been common knowledge centuries ago. If your PhD is on the second law of thermodynamics and you've spent your whole life studying it from books filled with letters and numbers, instead of observing and analyzing the behavior of heat in the real world, then you can't blame me. Misinterpreting kitchen thermodynamics to the point of teaching mainstream thermodynamics upside down, that's all on you. The thermal gradient is not dispersing energy. It is organizing matter. It keeps the system segregated. High energy at the top, low energy at the bottom, connected by a stream of water defying gravity. The second law says heat flows from hot to cold. Entropy always increases. Here you see the opposite. Heat overpowering both gravity and Marangone. Next, the Leidenfrost effect. Dismissed as culinary curiosity, but it displays exactly how planets orbit stars. Why doesn't Earth's atmosphere drift into space? Mass-based gravity can't explain it. Mars has roughly 40% of Earth's gravity, but virtually no atmosphere, and its core is cold. Earth retains its atmosphere with a hot core. Venus has roughly 90% of Earth's gravity, but nearly 100 times its atmosphere, and its core is hot. Core temperature correlates perfectly with atmospheric retention. This is empirical proof gravity has a thermal component. Popper said theory is scientific only if it can be falsified by observation. The logic, a million white swans don't prove all swans are white. One black swan destroys it. Relativity and thermodynamics say this water must flow down. It flows up. The theories are dead. Accept the post-Einsteinian era, or invent new dark matter fantasies. If you can't handle reality, keep watching Star Wars. Is modern physics a religion? The sanctuary prayers teach that laws are immutable and observations are objective. But what happens when reality shatters the law? Observe. At 80 degrees Celsius, the milk is in total motion, nearly overflowing the pot. The fire is on. Energy is being delivered. According to the sacred texts of thermodynamics, boiling is a state of matter defined by temperature and pressure. But your eyes see a different truth. Motion is determined by the presence of an active heat source, a vector force doing work, not a statistical average. In this next cycle, when the milk settles, the temperature reaches 95 degrees Celsius, 15 degrees higher. The only difference: the fire is off. If the evidence is so clear, why does the priestly class of physics ignore it? Because modern physics has ceased to be a search for truth and has become an institutional religion. It has all the markings of a faith. The prophet, an infallible Einstein whose word is law, sacred scriptures, field equations that have not been modified in over a century. The priestly class, brainwashed academics who wield the incomprehensibility shield, claiming that if you do not speak the ancient language of tensor calculus, you cannot question the dogma. When a religion's prophecy fails, it invents mysteries. When general relativity fails to explain galaxies, the high priests invent dark matter and dark energy, invisible, undetectable spirits that exist only to save the theory from falsification. When reality does not match the equations, they redefine reality. Sound familiar? Amen. This is not science. It is the mummification of a dead theory, preserved by the rituals of the academy, the baptism of entrance exams, the ordination of a PhD, the inquisition of peer review, which excommunicates any heresy that threatens the funding of the temple. If they can neither predict nor properly explain, without relying on pseudo-scientific, unfalsifiable mythological beings, why milk at 80 Celsius boils and overflows your pan with the fire on, yet stays still at 95 Celsius? Just because the fire is off. Why should we use their theology to understand the universe? I am a medical doctor. I was trained in evidence, not dogma. And today, I declare, modern physics is no longer science. It is a religion. And it is time for a reformation. Do physicists know how to handle a microscope? Heat is an attraction field force. Doesn't disperse, it pulls. The proof is right here. Watch the wet saliva sample move towards the red-hot light, then reverse course the moment heat is removed. This simple observation contradicts the second law of thermodynamics. Still skeptical? This sample is completely dry. There is no liquid, there is no convection, yet it still moves toward the heat. Solid matter responds to thermal gradients as an attractive force. This isn't theory. Have you noticed the scale? To this microscopic sample, 2000 magnification, that red-hot light is as powerful as heat from the sun is to Earth. The Marangoni flow states that liquids moves from hot to cold. In this scenario, this sample should go to the right. Reality begs to differ. The dense liquid on the microscope slide moves towards the heat, not the other way around. The heat cycle is, first, attraction, second, torque, third, repulsion. When you add 3D magnetism to it, then you have elliptical cosmological orbits. Why physicists ignore kitchen thermodynamics? Ice shatters glass and tears through metal, yet it cannot burst gas bubbles. If gas is less dense than liquid, how could gas molecules, previously dissolved in water, move in reverse, gradually finding and joining each other, forming perfect spherical structures stuck to the solid? While the plastic bottle was freezing, we activated deep research mode to understand just how intense the pressure generated by freezing water really is. When water freezes, it expands by about 9% in volume. If that volume has nowhere to go, internal pressure can exceed 300 MPa, equals 3,000 times atmospheric pressure. More pressure than a submarine withstands at the bottom of the ocean. Nevertheless, in the plastic bottle, the water froze completely, without damaging the bubbling structures. Finally, the before and after of the microscopy. Before, internal structures incompatible with gas bubbles. After, the structures inside, fractured. Are we going to accept that it is possible to break a gas? Why theoretical thermodynamics fails in the kitchen? They say boiling motion and steam are directly proportional, but kitchen thermodynamics begs to differ. Boiling motion and steam are inversely proportional. That is, the greater the motion, the less the steam. Don't insult my intelligence by claiming the air cooled down and the steam condensed. The water is at 100 degrees Celsius. The pan is boiling. The air inside doesn't magically cool in half a second just because the flame underneath went out. The heat didn't change. What changed was the attraction. The flame was holding the steam the same way Earth's heat holds our atmosphere against the vacuum of space. Without the flame, that thermal gravity collapses and matter finally escapes. 0.2 seconds. That's how long it takes to destroy modern physics. Do physicists know how to cook? Do they ever noticed this acceleration? They say, a slippery butter rushing towards gravity on a flat plane. Reality begs to differ. It shows a struggle between two different forces in play. The heat source against gravity. In the first experiment, the heat source won easily, because gravity was not opposing it. Meanwhile, in the second experiment, the fight was even, since the butter went on both directions at the same time. That is, towards the heat source, but against gravity and towards gravity. Why do physicists think these are gas bubbles? Fluid dynamics says gas bubbles are so fragile, they rise with the tiniest vibration. They might even appear as if they just chose to move. An illusion, of course. Okay, that sounds fair enough. But when I drop the bottle, most of them refuse to budge. Why?
Oh well, let me see. Get this. Surface tension, on, adhesion, air, very, very strong, buoyancy, nah.
But how can the same bubble be too weak and too strong at the same time?
And look, the truth? AI can't math and you should just read.
Isn't physics ironic? Forget everything you thought you knew about thermodynamics, because if heat is just statistics, then how could it be possible for you to be seeing surface movement below 30 degrees Celsius in less than 10 seconds after the fire is turned on? Do you want some good advice? Never mind, you wouldn't take it anyway, because who would have thought it figures that the old thermodynamics lost the lottery? You also weren't supposed to be seeing visible vapor below 30 degrees Celsius, increasing significantly after the fire is turned off. And you definitely shouldn't be seeing the temperature staying the same for more than 30 seconds with the fire on, and then rising 4 degrees Celsius in less than 30 seconds after the fire was turned off. Is meeting book thermodynamics, and then meeting the real life. Isn't it ironic, don't you think? A little too ironic. Yeah, I really do think